He told me. True or not, Colonel Edmonds did not like this story. It tended to detract from the positive image of Army aviation, and Colonel Edmonds considered himself to be probably the most important guardian of that image. He was the information officer of the Army Aviation Center and Fort Rucker, Alabama. A year before, the fact that Colonel Edmonds had been granted a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in journalism by Temple University had come to light when personnel officers in the Pentagon were reviewing his records to see what could be done with him now that some sort of unpronounceable inner ear malady had caused him to fail his annual flight physical examination, and he could no longer be assigned flight duty. Finding a round head on a round hole had pleased both the personnel officers and Colonel Edmonds. He had been afraid, now that he was grounded, that he would be assigned to some maintenance billet or some supply billet, or wind up in some other nothing assignment, like dependent housing officer. Being the information officer for the Army Aviation Center and Fort Rucker was a horse of an entirely different deal. He had always believed he had a flair for journalism and the written word, and had often wondered if he had made the right decision in staying in the Army after his compulsory after-ROTC 5-year initial tour. He could have gotten out and tried his hand as a journalist, or perhaps even as a novelist. His experience since he'd become the I.O. had confirmed his opinion of his ability as a journalist. Surprising most of his staff, made up of half civilian, half military, instead of just sitting behind his desk supervising things and reviewing press releases to make sure they reflected well on Army aviation, he had gotten right down to his new profession and gotten his hands dirty. That was to say, he took it upon himself to write some of the stories that would be published in the Army Flyer, the base newspaper, or sent out as press releases. Only the important stories, of course, not the run-of-the-mill pieces. He was on such a yard today, one that he intended to run on page 1 of the Army Flyer, and one he was reasonably sure would be printed in newspapers across the land. In his judgment, it had just the right mixture of human interest, military history, and a little good old-fashioned emotion. And of course, it could not help but burnish the image of Army aviation and indeed the Army itself. A sergeant walked up. "Sir?" Edmonds turned to look at him and nodded. "Colonel, that Mohawk you've been looking for just turned on finally. And it will park on the tarmac here?" "Yes, sir. It's a Blue Flight aircraft, Colonel. They always park here." "Thank you, Sergeant." "Yes, sir." Blue Flight was the name assigned to a special function of the aviation school's flight training program. If, for example, it was determined for some reason that a non-flying field grade officer, sometimes a major, most often a lieutenant colonel, needed to learn how to fly, he was sent to Rucker and assigned to Blue Flight. He, or she as the case might be, was then subjected to what amounted to a crammed course in flying. This was not to suggest that the course of instruction was less thorough in any way than the regular flight training programs of the aviation school. If anything, Blue Flight instruction, the best instructors were assigned temporarily